All right, class, we are going to continue. Sorry, I just had to bend down. You probably, all right, mumbling and learning. All right, we're on to operant conditioning, which I think most of us, I was almost going to say victim of. This is probably we do this or have had this done. This is something I'm familiar with because we learn about it in educational psychology. So, our buddy Skinner. He pioneered new ideas that expanded the understanding of learned behavior and what Watson coined behaviorism. Oh my goodness. All right. So Skinner, he discovers the process of operant conditioning. This is the idea that behaviors are strengthened if followed by a reinforcer or diminished if followed by a punishment. So, what's a reinforcer? It's an event that strengthens the behavior behind it. It can be used as a reward to encourage behavior in animals and in us, right? So, teaching a dog to sit by rewarding him with a treat um, is successful, right? Telling a student if they do 10 homework assignments on time, they get a homework free pass. I always bring up cookie. I'm a little obsessed with cookies, I guess. Or telling your child if you get all A's, we'll give you $20 for each A. So something that's a reinforcement that if you tell someone I'm going to give you this positive thing, something a reward, you are more likely to exhibit the behavior that I want you to exhibit. There's also punishment. So punishment's an event that diminishes the behavior behind it with an adverse consequence. So it can be used to discourage an undesired behavior in both the animals and humans. So teaching a toddler not to scream in the house by issuing a timeout. So far that hasn't worked for me. Jack thinks it's funny. But that's the idea, right? That you're trying to get the person to not do something. Um, so instead of getting A's, you got all C's and D's on your report card. So your parents took away your car. We live in New York, so that's nothing. But or took away they take away something, right? Or they make you do something. You're getting punished. You have to babysit or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm losing ideas. You get the idea. You're punished. You do something they didn't want you to do. We do something that you don't want to happen. So complex learning can be accomplished with shaping, which is a procedure in which reinforcers guide behavior towards closer and closer approximations of the desired behavior. So shaping occurs over time. And it's for something that can't just be done like this. So it's difficult to teach the dog to roll over. So first you reward the dog for sitting down, then for laying down, and then finally for rolling over. It could take several steps and or progressions. If we're talking about schooling, if you have a child that is a D student, well, telling them to get straight A's, that's kind of a huge leap. So first it's C's and then B's and then A's, right? Shaping, it's doing something in progression to get the greater goal. Rome wasn't built in a night. That's the idea here. So this got some of us a little tripped up last time. So there are punishments and rewards that are both positive and negative versions of both. So there are positive and negative reinforcements, and there are positive and negative punishments. Um, so let's go through these. I hope I have good examples for you. Sometimes my mind blanks, so hopefully we got this. So reinforcer, these are good things. Positive reinforcement, giving the subject something they want. You want money, you want food, you want to go outside, right? It's almost kind of what they're doing with us, like Cuomo. If you stay inside for a month, you get to go outside in 6 weeks, whatever. But that's a more serious account. But this, you do something, we'll give you what you want, right? A negative reinforcement is taking away something that the subject does not want. So, you don't want a curfew. So you do something like get good grades or you help your sibling or whatever it is, and instead of having a curfew for a Friday night, you don't have one. That sounds a little dangerous, but that's the idea is that you're taking away something that you don't want to do. How about a better example is you do well, so now you don't have to do your chores. Okay, so your negative reinforcement is still your reinforcer. It's like something you want, but negative reinforcements for taking away something you don't like because you did something good. Punishment. So a negative punishment is the withdrawal of rewarding stimulus. So you take away something, a privilege, money, time, um, status, whatever it is, you take away something that the person wants. A positive punishment is administering something to you that you don't want. So we don't have this in our school, but let's say you did something inappropriate and you got detention. I'm giving you something, but you don't want that, right? If you run a red light, you get a ticket. You're getting something, but you don't want it. So please associate the following. A reinforcer is something you get because you did good. That's my proper English. And a punishment is something that or not that you get. Dang it. Okay. Reinforcers is something that happens because you done good. A punishment is something that happens because you didn't do the behavior we wanted you to do. So I hope that was clear. You got a little confused last time. Just be careful of the wording, because I have seen this on FRQs, and you want to make sure that you read the wording properly so you properly answer the question. All right, we're continuing with the operant conditioning, OC. So the discriminative, yep, said that right. The discriminative stimulus is the stimulus that elicits the response after association with a reinforcer. So in the case of the dog, the discriminative stimulus is roll over, right? It's what we want you to do. Behaviors are best encouraged first with primary reinforcers. So an innately reinforcing stimulus, something that satisfies a biological need. So the idea is that if you are going to condition someone to do something, you want to offer them something they need. If it's an animal, food or treats. Human food works too. Money is a good one. So primary reinforcers is you're giving someone something they really need. One cannot provide a primary reinforcement every time, so then there are secondary conditioned reinforcers there that can be effective as they are linked or associated with a primary reinforcer. So maybe like a gift card to a restaurant or something of that nature, something you can use it to get something that you want. So if you pair a treat with a good boy, eventually the good boy will be as good as of a reward as the treat, thus negating the need for the primary reinforcer every time. So the idea is that if you do this enough where you go, good boy, treat, just the good boy will be enough, right? If I give you $20 for enough of the A's on your report card, at some point, I won't have to give you the $20. You're just going to want to get the A on the report card. So animals, you have 30 seconds left to reward them, or they don't understand. They don't make the connection between the behavior and the reward. And money, I don't know what tokens mean, but money for people can be exchanged for primary reinforcer, right? So money is very, very persuasive, obviously. So if I'm trying to condition you to do something, I want that to happen. I want that behavior to occur for a long period of time, and I would uh, theoretically is not the word. Ideally, I want you to continue with that behavior without me having to give you a reward or punishment. So here are the terms about gaining, losing, and recognizing the stimuli. So the acquisition. In classical conditioning, it's when the neutral stimulus begins to trigger the conditioned response, like the bell, right? In operant conditioning, acquisition is achieved through the strengthening of the reinforced response. So acquisition is when the subject is successfully anticipating after a stimulus or is performing the desired behavior. So acquisition for Pavlov is that the bell makes the dog salivate. Acquisition for rolling over is when you say roll over, the dog rolls over. Acquisition kind of thing it's when the person or subject does what you want them to do, right? Extinction. That's the diminishing of the CR, the conditioned response following the conditioned stimuli. It's what it sounds like. So extinction is when a response is no longer enforced and the behavior fades. So one would project that after a while, if Pavlov stopped ringing that bell while giving the dog food, when the dog heard bells later on, he wouldn't salivate. That condition would be extinct. Think of dinosaurs, dead, right? Extinction, right? So after a while, if you stop giving your dog a treat for rolling over and you say roll over and they don't do it, that's extinction. So acquisition is when when the behavior is locked in, so to speak, and extinction is when it goes away. Spontaneous recovery is the sudden reappearance of an extinguished conditioned response following a break or pause. It's random and we don't know why it happens. So let's say Pavlov stops doing that experiment. The dog stops salivating at the sound of a bell, and then randomly a month later he does it. That's the spontaneous recovery. Maybe it has something to do with the recesses of memory. There's not a real explanation, but it's when all of a sudden you went through extinction, but now you're back at acquisition. All right, moving on. So the subject, or continuing rather, continuing with this, the subject may respond to a stimulus that seems similar, but that is not a conditioned stimulus. That is a generalization. So if the dog hears a dinging sound of like wind chimes or the television and salivates, it's because the dog is, we're making that generalization. If I say, all right, like every time you do your homework, we're going to give you cookies, and I run out of cookies and I have to give you brownies instead, and you're like, cool, that's fine. Generalization. If it's close, it's having the same effect. The opposite is discrimination, where that's the learned ability to distinguish between the conditioned stimulus and the stimulus. What you hear, looks like, smells like, feels like, tastes like. So if you were told every time you do your homework you're getting a Chip Ahoy cookie and someone puts an Oreo in front of you, heck no, I ain't doing the homework now. You told me Chips Ahoy, right? Same thing with the dog. Bell, bell, bell. You use a wind chime, nothing happens. That's the discriminating. They're really looking at the distinguishing factors between the different stimulus. One can also layer more stimuli by adding and adding conditioned stimuli to already existing. This is high order learning. So, one can teach Pavlov's dog to associate a red light with the conditioned bell, causing the dog to salivate both at the sight and the light of the bell. Okay, so high order learning is when there's multiple stimuli. Okay. And then practice. That's what it sounds like. Subjects and people can start to learn slowly and easily with progressively fulfilling results along the way. So when learning to bat, one starts with a bunt to slow, close pitches with a large ball, progressively increasing distance, speed, and working up to hitting a regular ball, right? If you want to start running, you go out of your house, you're not going to run a mile in 10 minutes. Every day, maybe you go, okay, I'm going to run for this amount of time, and then up it, and up it, right? Practice. And finally, last slide, the schedule. So there are four primary approaches or a schedule. So continuous. This is reinforcement where the reinforcers responds every single time. So every single time that dog goes over, he's getting a treat. Every single time you get an A, you're getting $20. Every single time I put the food in front of Fido, I'm ringing that bell, right? Continuous, doing it over and over and over and over again. There's fixed ratio. It's a reinforcement schedule that reinforces a response after a specific number of responses, right? So that place that gives you, if you buy 10 coffees, will give you the 10th one for free. Or if you do 5 homeworks, then you get the cookie, right? A fixed ratio. You know what the ratio is. You're anticipating it. Then there's the partial intermittent reinforcement. This is a response only part of the time. So for me, I give you work every day and I'm going to collect it twice a week, but you don't know which days they are, right? So you're doing the work, you anticipate, is this lady going to pick it up or not? It's partial or intermittent. And it makes sense that this results in lower acquisition and constant reinforcement, but is less resistant to extinction. So meaning if you're not sure when you're getting the reinforcement, maybe you're not as inclined to do the behavior. However, if you buy in and you're exhibiting this behavior, you're more resistant to extinction because you're not sure when you're getting rewarded or, reinforced next. So it's that you're kind of like learning that behavior without the reinforcement, if that makes sense. And then there's variable ratio schedules. So this reinforces behavior in a seemingly unpredictable manner that can come in waves of frequent reinforcement or none. So the idea is if you like using a slot machine, there may be days where you sit there and nothing comes out of the machine, and then 3 days in a row you get tons of money, right? Scratch off cards. You may buy one every single day, get nothing, and then all of a sudden there's a few days where you get it. So it's unknown, right? You may get it, you may not. Okay, so class, that was our behaviorism. That was a look at the conditioning. I hope that was helpful. I hope you all are doing well, and that concludes notebook page 11.